So I am here again with Clayton Thomas from the Root brand. How are you doing, Clayton?
I am doing great. How are you across the pond?
Well, I'm good. I'm good. It's interesting. Lots of things that will probably come up into the conversation because, like all of us at the moment, people are on such a roller coaster of physical stresses and emotional stresses because things are changing daily across the globe and it's hitting people at different times. So this is probably going to come onto the conversation that we're going to be covering today. I must say, I am really loving, I know we covered this last time we spoke, the clean slate, but I've now got all my horses, my dogs, my cats, and my two-legged families on it. And I'm really, really impressed because one of the things a lot of us in the UK have noticed is the chemtrails have been horrific the last couple of months. Are you getting the same problem in where you are?
We have it here pretty consistently.
Right.
You know, it's always one of those great things. You wake up in the morning, you see the beautiful blue sky, and then you wait a little bit and you start to see the planes flying over with the streaks. You know, so you get to appreciate that. And I think people are becoming more aware of it now because they're like, wait a minute, we're being poisoned from all over, and not thinking, oh yeah, they've been doing this for 30 years and it's all part of the same plan.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the hard part of really accepting what's in it. Right here, Christina was saying that there's 2 forms of black mold that have never been identified prior to the last year or so. Mm-hmm. That's some of the stuff that's likely being aerosol, that's being put out aerosol so we can breathe that stuff in, because what's happening when your immune system drops, you have an explosion of mold and fungus, you know, that grows in your body. That's why cancer kills you. It's not cancer, it's the fungal overgrowth that takes over, and that's what kills you. So, you know, it's really just understanding how dark this world is, you know, and that this, you know, people are seeing one part over here going, oh, well, this is the issue, while the entire time they've been poisoning us in our water. You know, I was joking. No, it's not really joking about it because it's a serious issue. The announcements that the UK government made a couple of weeks ago that they were going to add more fluoride to the water. And I was laughing. I'm like, they're telling you that now because they've done it for a while.
Exactly.
And now they're just letting you know, oh yeah, we're boosting the amount of fluoride in the water. You know, no, you've already done it. It's not something that you're going to do. You're just letting us know you've done it. And, you know, this is all part of the plan. So, and it's not to get too conspiratorial, but the Nazis were really good at that with the Jews when they increased fluoride in the water to make that population more docile and controllable. So when they gave them instructions to go get your tattoo and, you know what, go get a free train ride, and then we'll give you an opportunity to work for free, and then we'll give you a free shower. You know, they're like, oh, okay, this is what we're supposed to follow because they're here to help us. You know, and the messaging is all the same. It's just people now have to be aware of their environment. I think, you know, there's a few people that are waking up to it. But the more you go through this process of just cleaning up the mess, and you don't have to worry about the existing environment and saying, oh, it's because of this existing environment. No, that doesn't matter. This is going back to, you know, really your ancestors with how they were exposed to things and what they were poisoned with that went into you, you know, through the womb. So it's from day one, and it doesn't matter if you're human or animal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all a matter of exposure. And we're seeing that, you know, and you've been around, you know, animals for, you know, the majority of your life as well. A lot of the issues that we see today did not exist, you know, a couple decades ago, right? The allergies, the cancer issues, a lot of the problems that we see in our pets, and your pets are an indication of your environment. They just react quicker to it because their metabolism is faster, they respond faster. And, you know, if we look at indoor air and how toxic that is, you know, your cats and dogs are typically in there and they're responding quicker to that. So it's, you know, it's not something we can get away from. So the question then becomes, what are you going to do to clean up your environment as best as possible, so then you're more protective of the outside environment?
This is why I love it, because, you know, I'm really trying to, well, I always have really tried to focus on, yeah, you know, we've got to have this awareness of what the challenges are, because if you don't have that awareness, you're in ignorant bliss. And unfortunately, things are going to creep up to you and be very well advanced before you know.
Yeah.
But what the message, you know, we're clearly giving out to people is there is a lot we can do to protect ourselves. And it's time to really start focusing for everyone on what we can do about it. Because as we're saying, as we say over here in the UK, there's no point crying over spilled milk. You know, this is a fact, whether we like it or not. We're all exposed to different degrees of it. I mean, I'm seeing horses dropping like flies at the moment. It's horrendous. And again, I've been in this business of natural animal care for more years than I like to admit to. And we've never seen problems like we've had at the moment. Young horses, you know, people that are really responsible horse owners doing by the book as, you know, good as they can, and they're still having all these problems. So today we're going to talk about some solutions. Now, one of the things I really wanted to have the discussion about, because it's not something I've heard enough about recently, is the importance of the pineal gland. And it's a really, really important one at this time, isn't it? So
it's absolutely crucial. And I think what's important to understand is it is and has been the most important, you can say, little organ or gland in the entire body. And it's so small, yet so impactful that it's the manipulation that went into it many, many generations ago, which is how we got into this process. Because you have to understand the pineal gland is the light center of the brain. And it's the ultimate systemic double entendre, right? Because being the light center of the brain, it is through your pineal gland, your third eye, that light comes through. That's why when people say, if you have your eyes closed, you can still see, it's because you're seeing with your third eye, right? If you're open. And so it's the light center of the brain. It's where melatonin is produced, right? Because through the pineal gland, serotonin converts to melatonin, which allows you to sleep. It controls the circadian rhythm, right? So your sleep-wake cycle, when the sun comes up, you wake up. When the sun goes down, you get ready to go to sleep. That's your circadian rhythm, which is controlled by your pineal gland. The reason they put fluoride in the water is fluoride calcifies your pineal gland. So understanding twofold to this, the second part of the pineal gland is it's the light center of the brain. Spiritually, it is your spiritual antenna that connects us to our source. So however you want to look at your spirituality, we are spiritual beings. We are energy. We are light. We have an antenna. That is our primary antenna. They figured out how to cover it up, how to block it. And then they've put these negative antennas, because that's what these heavy metals, the mercury, the cadmium, the arsenic, the lead, the aluminum, the cesium, the strontium, the gadolinium, the graphene, all of these things, they create and are antennas for negative frequencies and negative experiences, negative information. So you have to do two things. You've got to remove the negative antennas. That's what's being injected into people. If you pay attention, you hear people talking about, oh, well, they're creating these little nano antennas. Yeah, duh. They're programming you. You've been programmed your entire life. We've been programmed for multiple generations to get to this point. We've been shrouded because they've turned off or covered up our ability to connect to our source and our ability to sleep properly. If you watch television here in the United States, which I get to watch like very minuscule time, one, because it's trash, and two, I just don't have time. If you watch commercials, you see three primary things on commercials. One, you see alcohol commercials. Two, you see pharmaceutical and drug commercials. Third, sleep commercials. It could be melatonin supplements. It could be pillows. It could be mattresses. It could be sheets and everything, but everything's predicated around sleep. Why? Because we need it. A third of our life is supposed to be spent in a dream state, because that's where we can solve problems. That's where we create. That's where we connect. That's where we regenerate. That's where we detox, because our systems will shut down and they work on rebooting overnight. But what's been proven with sleep deprivation is it doesn't take very long, like a day or two of a lack of sleep, that you can change someone's brain state and you can cause them to go crazy.
Yeah.
So if you can control or disrupt a healthy sleep cycle, people can never be well. That's where that's important, but it's also why the Trinity is so crucial, right? And it's so cool that we get to hit on this because it's one of my favorite subjects. But when you look at the Trinity, right? Clean slate is decalcifying the pineal gland. Restore is regenerating the gut. Why is that important? Because 95% of all of the neurotransmitters are actually produced in your gut, but through your vagus nerve, they're sent to your brain where your brain uses them. What does 0N do? Well, 0N is that catalyst that feeds the gut the ability to produce dopamine and serotonin. Mm. So with it being an adaptogen,
speaking, carry on.
It's the greatest. With it being an adaptogen, it's feeding the gut the ability to produce it. But then your body, your intention controls which one you get more of whenever you needed it. During the day, you're going to have more dopamine and a little less serotonin. At night, you're going to have more serotonin, less dopamine, because the serotonin goes to the pineal gland, converts to melatonin. So you get to go to sleep. The extra serotonin actually converts to DMT, which is why you dream quickly. Then in the morning, the dopamine levels spike. That's what causes you to wake up. So you feel amazing, refreshed in the morning. That's dopamine. That's the cycle. That's what we have to get back into. And that's what's amazing about 0N is using 0N after a couple of days actually resets your circadian rhythm. It's one of the things it's designed to do. So going through that process, if you're one that you want to connect spiritually, or if you are very spiritually intended and spiritually involved, this honestly is the most important thing you can do right now, because you can't function at the level that we are made to without doing these things, right? And very simply, you've got to get the metals, the heavy metals, the environmental toxins, the molds and such out systemically, slowly, passively. There's clean slate. Restore is a gut bomb. It's going to help kill the fungus, kill mold, kill yeast, kill parasites. Kind of important. So you got to flush that stuff out. It's going to take that leaky gut and bring everything back together. And then 0N, like I said, is also gut protective, but it's feeding the gut the ability to produce dopamine and serotonin. And I mean, I've taken supplements for 35 years, and I've never taken anything like this amazing little golden capsule of greatness. And there's a reason we had to get it banned substance approved, because it works so well. We had athletes coming back to us asking two questions. One, is this addictive? And two, is it legal? Because I've never felt or performed so well. And
let's go through some of the things when people use it. So just to confirm then that when you're talking about the pineal gland, the clean slate will help to decalcify the
very quickly, very quickly, because it's interesting with the pineal gland that based on volume, the pineal gland gets more blood flow than every other organ of the body except the kidneys.
Right.
So when you look at that, you go, wait a minute, the kidneys are the primary filter. They filter everything. And the pineal gland's second in line for blood flow. And you think, a clue, right? It's kind of important.
It's very
so when you look at the process of how clean slate works, right? When you take it in your mouth, it'll get mucosal absorption, some sublingual absorption. If you have it under your tongue, you're swishing it around. When you swallow it, it's going to go from your gut into your bloodstream. Well, if it's in your bloodstream and your pineal gland's getting a massive amount of blood flow, how quickly is that going to happen? Well, one of the first things that's going to take place is it's going to start chipping away at that fluoride. Mm. As you start to take that out, that's why people talk about, man, I'm sleeping better in a couple of days. It's been really interesting chatting with people when they go, if they're praying or if they're doing, different things on the spiritual standpoint. They're like, I am more connected than I've ever been. And I'm seeing things, or I'm having experiences that I can't explain. I'm like, well, we could explain them. You just not experienced them before because you weren't unlocked. So when you become better connected to your source, and this is the fear of those that are trying to control us, is the more people that happens to, the more people that wake up And, and when you hear people talking about being woke or being awake, they're not. You really aren't awake until you clean this up and you open it up and you can start seeing and you can start really shining. When that happens, and that happens to enough people, this whole thing is going to change. The whole landscape changes. So
we need it to, don't we? We
really do. And I think that's the important part, is that's why this is really a movement. It's what Christina was put here for. She had that prophecy put over her 27 years ago that she was put here to heal people in a war on healthcare. No one had a clue what that meant. And, you look now, 5 years ago when she was told this was going to happen, specifically, she was told 5 years ago by Foster and Kimberly Gamble and 10 other people that were praying over her because they said she was a channeler. They're like, look, this is what's going to happen. We want you to go to Wuhan and work on some retroviruses, which she declined. But she knew this was coming. I mean, they told her specifically, there's going to be a viral attack. This is what's going to happen. We want to create some retroviruses to offset it. But so she started doing her work, and that's where Clean Slate, Restore, and Zero In really came from. It came from the need of knowing what was coming. Yeah. So, and you can look at the timing and go, why did you launch it on February 2nd of 2020? It's like, because we knew, and I love numerology. Because the symbolism aspect goes on both sides, right? You have those that want to control us, that have to use symbolism. They have to show it to us. Well, we can do the same thing. We can flash our symbolism in front of them too.
Yeah, and that's really, really important. It's such important points. And it's all about also not submitting and realizing that there is always a solution if you look hard enough. Because I think a lot of people are really struggling at the moment, because I was just saying just before we started, so a friend of mine in Australia has just messaged me saying that in Western Australia, it's now, as of today, they've made it compulsory that by the 1st of December, anyone who's virtually in any employment has got to have had the first one and the second one by the end. And we're seeing this spreading at an alarming rate. And, it's just so frustrating when you see, I mean, the trouble is we all look at the world through our own eyes, don't I? Or our own energy experience, whatever you want to call it. So I might look at it and just thinking no. But other people are in very different situations. For example, I'm lucky enough, I work for myself. So, and there's a reason why I work for myself.
Yeah.
Because of things like this. And I only
brings up a key point, not to interrupt you on that, of looking at the model, right? Because when you look at consumerism, and when we had the lockdowns here initially in the United States, small businesses were closed. The blocks, the big stores, Amazon, Walmart, the empire, right? The part of the beast in the system, they didn't close, because what they want to do is shift consumerism. They want all of your money. They want you relying on them for sourcing your goods. That way they can put whatever they want in those goods.
Absolutely.
To get to you. But if you don't have control, you're screwed. So when we talk about the benefits of Clean Slate, Zero In, and Restore, it's really, really important because of what they're designed. But I would argue in this environment that the social sharing concept that we created is as equally important, because you're going to buy these because they work and there's nothing else like them. But to be able to have a mechanism that can reward people for sharing and helping to clean people up, the revenue that can come back through that can offset expenses, maybe that you're not going to get from working. Maybe, it can help with a car payment, help with food, help with a house payment, pay rent, what have you. And, if you help enough people, maybe you don't have to work, so, and people have to begin to understand and accept. And part of this goes with decalcifying the pineal gland and shutting off the programming that we've had, because you hear people in the religious sense, oh, money's the root of all evil. No, you're being programmed to not respect it. So you give it away because they know if they have it, they can control you. Because while many of us realize that we don't need $200 billion, but if you had it and you had the right intentions, you can take over the world. because they've done it. And that's really the point of changing your mindset and accepting that, look, you are worthy. I was having this conversation with my son a couple of days ago because of I watched the most amazing 5-hour history movie over the weekend. It's 5 hours long. And it's a beautiful part of having a phone is I just streamed it from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and paused it when I needed to. And it was going over, our previous history with what the world was. And if you look at buildings, and you can see this the best in the UK and throughout Europe, a lot of the buildings, if you dig down, there's another story.
Yeah.
Right. So the infrastructure is much deeper than what we thought. So our world was much different before us. And you get into the history of when we started to get controlled, what happened through this process. And my son's like, what happened to that civilization? What happened to those beings? Where did they go? Are they going to come back? I'm like, it was us. We are that previous society, but we've been poisoned. We've been turned off. We've been turned into slaves. Once you start to turn that back on and you start to realize that, oh, this is for us. We did that before. We just had advanced technology and we were doing things differently. And then the Luciferians said, no, we want to control you. So they took over because we submitted. And now, if we don't do it, this is what's interesting, right? If you look at glyphosate alone is an extinction event.
Yeah.
Because it's decreasing sperm count. It's been proven over the last 20 years, male sperm counts dropped by over 30%. If a species can't reproduce, they're done. So you just look at glyphosate alone, you go, oh, okay, this was pretty bad. Then you start to compound what they've done with mercury, what they've done with lead. They figured out how to get people to accept putting it into their bodies, whether it's through amalgam fillings, whether it's through injection, to say, hey, your babies need these things. They need DTaP. They need all this stuff. And, oh, we have a preservative in there. It just so happens to be mercury, but it's there for good. And you said, oh, that's okay.
It's just incredible, isn't it? I find the last year and a half has been absolutely fantastic in a lot of ways for me, because I've never connected ever with so many like-minded people, because up until that point, we were all completely isolated and we didn't know people like us existed. And so we've been living in our own little world, seeing the world through these eyes, but having no one to discuss and share it with and build strength and community so that people can show. I mean, I've been told by family members, no one in the whole world thinks like you do. You're just a complete nutter. And I'm like, actually, there's loads of us. There's loads of us that really do.
There's millions and millions of us. And that's the whole point. And there's, the key is giving people the opportunity of saying, hey, if you do a couple of these things that I'm doing for my health, and you have to kind of disguise it, right? To say, oh, you know what? I just want to perform better. This is why I'm doing this. You should try this stuff. It makes me feel amazing. And then as they get cleaned up and they start to unlock a little bit, they're like, oh, you're not crazy. I was a drone. You're like, yes. Right. And it's the important part with sheep, right, is understanding that we've been turned into livestock. They look at us like cattle and they treat us like sheep. And
well, I'm just going to stop you there. Actually, going back a stage from that, they first taught us to treat livestock like livestock. Because if you go back to traditional farming and how most people did not have that relationship with animals. We didn't use animals in those ways. We had a partnership with animals, and yes, they did eat them and things, but they took what they needed. They kept them humanely. It was in their interest to make sure the animals they were eating were as healthy as possible. So when you look, and because of your background with your family in veterinary medicine, when you look, they brainwashed us a lot of the time through what they told us was normal for animals: annual vaccinations, passports, microchipping, factory farm them, calling them treat like sheep and cattle. Well, my point's always been we should never treat sheep and cattle like that. And if we didn't treat sheep and cattle like that, we wouldn't be falling for this crap.
Yep. And so if we look at beef, right? just beef in general. The most valuable beef in the world is what? It's Wagyu A5 plus beef from Japan. What do they do in Japan with those cows? They get massages every day. They give them beer. They hang out with them. They're talking with them. They have a great relationship with them. So when it's their time, they're happy. They feel good. They taste amazing. And so it goes back to our connection, because people are beginning to understand that, from a chromosome standpoint, we've known that from primates and humans, we're not far off. I mean, it's like one chromosome. Some people, it's like maybe a quarter of a chromosome. You're like, you didn't adapt very much.
Yeah, I love it. I'm very happy to be most primate.
Exactly. And we all are. And the same thing when you look at dogs and cats and horses, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, everything else, the bears, the dolphins and such, that we share a lot of things. And a lot of these species, and you look at horses and dolphins, they are way more advanced than we are right now.
Oh my God, yes.
And it's really the fun thing of working with horses and being around them since I was a kid. It's the connection that you can have with animals, and you see that with kids. You see that with people that have had traumatic brain injuries, whether it's from the military or kids that are neurologically disconnected right now because of mercury and such, that when they're around these animals, you see them light up, and you see the animals light up, and they're like, oh, I'm here for you. Let me be of service. Why do we have service animals? So the dogs are like, people think that service animals need to be trained. No, the animals are going, I need to train you.
Exactly.
Because I'm like, yeah, I'm here to help, but you suck at communicating right now, and I'm here to help you. So just let's figure this out. And, being able to create those connections, especially with kids now, between animals and people is so crucial, and to reset that example. Because if we don't do this now, I guess back to my point, if we don't do this now as a society, as humanity, if we don't take back what this process is supposed to be, we're done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Completely.
Very short period of time that we have in order to do this. But that's just it. I mean, we are the tipping point. And I was going over this with my man school a couple of weeks ago, when one of the speakers was going over, everyone was so excited for 2020, and it was this big shift spiritually and energetically, and all of these things were going to happen, and we're seeing this divine femininity come into place, and all of these great things are going to happen. The world is going to change. And then we got this, and I'm sitting there, and I brought it up with them. I'm like, you think that wasn't a response? You think it just happened? No, it was a response, because if you bring in that much light, the dark is going to respond to it, because they're trying to control this. So they're like, oh, no, we're not just going to let you take over. You don't see at any point where you have a bad or an evil influence that the resistance stops, right? They're like, oh, well, you won. Well, you caught me, take us in, we're fine. Let's go do the Nuremberg trials again. You can execute us for what we've done. We're cool with it. No, they're going to do everything they can to take as many souls with them as possible, because that's the goal in the first place.
Exactly.
To say, hey, you know what, if they've caught on to this is not going to end well for us. Okay, so how are we going to kill as many as possible? Can we get 3 billion of them? Okay, let's do this. Because if we get 3 billion of them, if we do win, if we knock off enough of them, they're going to see, oh, well, collectively, we need to be controlled because this is getting out of hand. So it's that balance of saying, yeah, you know what, there's going to be people that die. There's going to be millions of people that die from this. There's already millions of people that have died. Yeah. There's going to be probably hundreds of millions. But we have to do our piece to take back the humanity for those that want to be part of the change, right? And that's I think really the big part of getting to understand that we are given free will. You choose, and it's the hard part for people to understand with all these mandates and everything. They're like, they're telling us we have to do this. I'm like, no, if you actually listen, they're telling you to choose their way. They're not telling you you have to. Exactly. They're giving you the opportunity to choose poorly, right? if you remember Indiana Jones.
Hearing it differently though, Clayton, don't you think? I think this is hard because I had a really deep think about this weekend because of a couple of events that happened. But I think the thing is, we talk about free will, but when you've been that programmed, and particularly when your pineal gland is that calcified, I would argue that a lot of those people do not have free will at the moment. Not
but
really.
That's the whole point. That's the process of and that's why this is not something that happened over the last 18 months.
Yeah, it's
multi-generational to get you to this point. It's the hard part for people to comprehend right now because of that process. Is they're like, oh, well, this is horrible. I have to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
you don't.
What most people do. And this is why I think it's so beautiful. It's like you like you start off with the name, you start just one bit, and you've only got to open that crack for someone a tiny bit for them to suddenly have that light spark go on and start asking different questions, and then you're away and running. The hard bit is getting people to that bit. And I know, we're not responsible how other people live their lives, but you and I are parents. So as a parent, you're taking decisions for your children long before they're even born. So
or you tried to.
Yeah, you try.
They don't listen.
No, particularly when they're as big as mine now. But it is a really important point in terms of they're deliberately trying to make, they've been very successful in their strategy. Yeah. But equally, I think they've, despite all the censorship, again, had this not happened, none of these awakened people would have got together in such force and been spreading it. So that's a real beauty of actually how, as you say, when the dark rises up, the light rises up even further.
And it goes and it speaks to the process, right? Of this was going to begin because, like, I talk about people being siloed, for so long. We all had our gifts, our spiritual gifts, whatever we did, and we were siloed. Like, this is what I do. I'm not going to combine what I do with you do. And there's always this sense of competition of, oh, you're trying to take from what I'm doing. And if I work with you, you're going to take away what I have. And now over the last couple of years, because of this process, we're starting to see this amalgamation of all of these beautiful minds, and I love it because we're sitting in the center of the storm in many aspects. And we're pulling all of these different personality types, different spheres of influence, different levels of spiritual ascension, and different levels of business acumen and medical healthcare, what have you. I was just on doing an interview with Mr. Universe, Ty OG. So Ty's on board with us now, and he's a Mr. Universe. And we're like, okay, how do we bring this together with fitness? Mm-hmm. And it's something that we've never seen before, right? But also, depending upon what book you read, revelation never happened until it happened. Well, it's happening. People can't understand the frame of reference. They're like, well, this has never happened before. I'm like, yeah, because you forgot to turn the page. Yeah, you're in the middle of it. Yeah, right. We are here, but the part that is so important to understand is this is an active participation role. It's not something that we get to sit back and be a spectator of, because if we choose to be spectators in this, we're done, right? That's the free will part. That's what's so crucial, is you have to choose to say, yeah, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. You can't sit back. And that's where you look at these countries. You look at Australia, right? What have they done in Australia? They took away people's guns. Yeah. Well, you know what they did? They didn't take them. They let people voluntarily give them to them. And then say, oh, well, you don't want these. We want a safer society, because you know what happens when no one else has them and only the bad guys do? Bad things happen. Yeah. That's why things don't happen this manner in the United States as much, especially where we live in Tennessee, because there are more guns than people.
And this is so interesting, because this was the absolute start, at the very start of the pandemic. I listened to an interview by Brian Rose on London Real, and it was some old American rock star. Apparently he's really famous, but I didn't know who he was. Now, we are so brainwashed in the UK because we're not allowed to own guns, haven't been able to, because we believed all the false flag events. Now I can't believe I was so stupid to believe it, but I did, and I did believe it. And I was like, how can Americans be so stupid that they're letting every Tom, Dick, and Harry have a gun? And then I listened to this interview, and it was start of pandemic, and I was sitting there thinking, God, we've got no way of protecting ourselves. And the penny dropped completely, and I was like, oh my God, not only that, as you say, they've got people to willingly, and this is what they've done with this as well, they've got people, a lot of people, not as many as I think, otherwise they wouldn't be bringing in the mandates, not as many as they'd like us to think, but a lot of people, they've got them to willingly put themselves on that sacrificial slab, haven't they?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah. Just pause it for a minute. Again, I'm also going to ask you another question, even though we've covered it before, on the labeling of the clean slate before we finish, because I've just got another 2 people emailed me about it today. So yeah, so I think, I think the beauty is that just when we start cleansing out these toxins from our bodies, we do see the world in a different way, and that opens up a whole range of choices to us that we might not have seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. And you start to see, not only you start to see things, but the synchronicities start to really flow, because you begin to understand that you actually create your world. Yeah. Our intention, and that's where Zero In is so unique as an adaptogen, because if you boost your dopamine and serotonin levels, significantly, and this is why with this stuff, most people take one in the morning and they'll take one in the afternoon. After you've done that for a little bit, try 2, try 3. 4 is outstanding. I don't recommend everyone do that, because it's.
So talk us through the caffeine here, because the main question I get about the Zero In is the caffeine. So I get the question about what is anhydrous
caffeine. Yeah.
Why is it in there, and is it safe for animals?
Safe for animals, safe for people. We have kids, I think I know for sure, as young as 5 and 6 that are using Zero In. And it's important to understand the biochemistry, right? So anhydrous caffeine is actually an extract of the leaf of like a coffee bean or a tea. I think it's the coffee plant. So coffee and caffeine comes from the bean, right? So it's extracted from the bean. So it's a different source, a different mechanism. Anhydrous caffeine is a dopamine catalyst and it's a dopamine agonist, but it's also unique in the fact that it serves as a dopamine buffer. So it's used in Zero In as a catalyst to itself boost some dopamine, but also work with the other 5 ingredients and the vitamin D with the tyrosine, the theanine, the mucunapurines, the pine bark, and the turmeric extract, to work with all of these to improve dopamine and serotonin production, but do it naturally. And I think I can share, let me see if I can pull this up. I can show you what this looks like if I can share my screen. And
there we go. The computer screen's so small, I have to keep putting my, you do something for eyesight next.
Scroll down here and I'll show this to you. Okay, so we got this. Can I share? I can. So this is a case study done by Dr. Stefan Rao using a heart rate variability system that's I think it's class 2 medical device, very, very well proven and established. This is looking at heart rate variability. So this was a test done over 45 minutes, right? So taking 10 drops of clean slate, 2 capsules of Zero In. So if you take your theory, right, you're taking 200 milligrams of caffeine at one time, right? So people would look at that and go, hold on, that's a ton of caffeine. You get your heart rate's going to change, your blood pressure is going to change because it's a lot of caffeine. Well, you have to understand this is a different mechanism. And it's the important part of understanding biochemistry and understanding biochemical processes, because my wife is from biotech and pharma and has a different perspective. She knows steady state, peak plasma levels, how to play with, the absorption of nutrients and such, and how to program them. So what we saw in this, and this is over 45 minutes, right? This isn't over days. This isn't over weeks. This isn't even over hours. This is in 45 minutes. So we saw a reduction in stress and improved cardiovascular function, improved brain function, a better overall just feeling of wellness, improved psycho-emotional condition, and leading to improved restful sleep. So let's look at how that applied. So this is the heart rate here, and you can see the heart rate variability, the rhythmogram here. So this is the baseline. You can see beep, 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 right? This is 45 on the right, is 45 minutes after taking 2 capsules of 0N and 10 drops of clean slate. When you look at the heart rate, you don't see much of a change. Just on the bottom here, you see a little bit of improvement in rhythm. So the heart rhythm, where caffeine would cause the disruption, this is where you'd see it, because if you take 2 cups of coffee, you can take your pulse and your heart rate and it's going up, right? Because that's what caffeine and stimulants do. This didn't change it. But when you look at the heart rate variability, which is crucial, you can see the shifts. You see the baseline, then you see 45 minutes later. And what this did is you can see on the bottom, you see where the markers here are down here, where A, for cardiovascular adaptation, was functioning at 50%. Vegetative regulation was functioning at 57%. Neurohormonal regulation was at 55, or was it 44%? The psycho-emotional state was at 43%, and the overall health index was at 49. And then 45 minutes later, you go 99, 100, 99, 97, 99. Well, I'm going to say that that's significantly, statistically significant, right? Yeah. That's an improvement. So are you seeing a spike? No. What you're seeing is your system start to function amazingly. And we can look at some of the data, but there's a couple things that are most important to look at on this. One, biological age. We have 2 types of age. We have chronological, which we celebrate for how long we've been here, right? More importantly is your biological age.
Yeah.
What age are you functioning at? So in this instance, we had a 61-year-old who initially was functioning like they were 53. So they're 8 years younger than their chronological age, which is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Well, 45 minutes later, that same 61-year-old was functioning as a 31-year-old. They lost 22 years in 45 minutes. And
what sort of functioning is measured by that? I mean,
so this is all heart rate variability. This is your autonomic nervous system. This is how your body is actually functioning, right? And this is why physics is so amazing, because through these measurements, you can analyze all this. There's multiple devices. I actually work with one here in the United States for doing this, but this is physics. But check this out. This is where we get to look at what we are, right? We are light. We understand that. We know we have an aura, right? Sometimes you can see people's aura, right? Like with my wife, she glows in the dark. Sometimes in the light, people can see that there's white and blue all around her. But on the left, this is the person's aura as their baseline. 45 minutes later, after 2 capsules of 0N and 10 drops of clean slate, this is their aura. Do you see a difference? They went supernova, right? So this is the expression of energy that we have the capability of becoming, going from, disrupted, because you can see the disruptions around their body where the indentations, right? But then you see 45 minutes later, everything's like this massive starburst. But then we can look also at your chakras. Well, you can look just based on the light to see how bright those are shining, but you can look at the output, 43%. Look at their pineal gland. Their third eye went from 41 to 94. Throat chakra went from 44 to 98, 57 to 99 for the heart. And you go, okay, from 25 to 88. Yeah. All right. That's pretty good. Which one do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that's functioning at a 99 level, or do you want to be at 44? I'm pretty sure people would choose, give me the 90s. Same thing when we look at your Chinese meridians, right? This is, you can see the meridian chart on the outside. You want to be around the outside, but you can see the disruptions. You know, the kidney function was at 62, bladder 53. Your heart is at 62. You can see it's on the inside and everything's not balanced. 45 minutes later, what do you see? 100, 88, 99, 100, 100, 94, and everything's on the outside and almost perfectly balanced. And then the same thing goes for your doshas, that everything lines up. You want balance around the outside, and then internally, that's more of your personality. But you can see that there was imbalance initially, 17, 17, 21, 22, 20. And then after 45 minutes, you see 19, 19, 20, 20, 20, which basically means these are 20s as well. They're just like 19.9. Mm-hmm. So you become balanced. This is what happens, right? So it's not just talking about a physical change. We're talking 45 minutes, right? So that's what's important. It's like, oh, well, is caffeine's bad for you? Well, no, it depends on what type it is and what it's doing and how it's working with its constituents, right? Because we know water is good for you. We need water, but water can also be bad for you, right? Because if it's freaking polluted and it's the wrong type of water.
And if you breathe it in.
And if you put too much of it in,
yeah,
it can be a problem. And what we've seen with Zero In is, I don't recommend this for everybody, but you know, one of my son's friends was the test for this. He is 21 years old. When they did it, they were having some fun at the lake on a Saturday, and in the morning he took eight capsules at once. So that's 800 milligrams, right? If you're looking at it from a caffeine perspective, he took 800 milligrams of caffeine. He could have, if we were talking about regular caffeine, he could have run a marathon and gotten like, and not cared. They said, he was like, I was so calm. I felt so good. They said he was like on a 14 hours of just happiness. He was loving on everybody, hugging everybody. He's like, I feel so good. I'm like, dude, how'd you sleep? He said, well, we went to bed at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I slept like a log. He said, I slept so good. My dreams were amazing. I woke up a couple hours later just feeling amazing. Like, that's the process.
So
right?
Does the Zero In help with, I know that you were talking before when we were on another call with someone about, say, for example, dogs with dementia and things.
Oh, well, it's a combination, right? Because the dementia aspect is just heavy metals.
Yeah.
Right. But when you look at the pathways, and this is why we have the Trinity. I mean, it's hard to say, well, this one work best with this. No, there's a reason they all work together. That if you can remove the metals, the heavy metals, the mercury, lead, and aluminum, right? The neurotoxic metals, and we won't throw glyphosate in there because there's not as much research done on glyphosate and neurotoxicity, even though it's insane. If it's the metals that cause the buildup of plaque and tau, right? So that's where dementia, Alzheimer's, CTE. So if you've studied CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy is the second term of CTE. The first term is chronic toxic encephalopathy. It is chronic toxic encephalopathy, which is the diagnosis for Alzheimer's and dementia. That's what they are, is they're chronic toxic encephalopathy, but they don't use that terminology with you because it's a hint. It means that mercury, aluminum, and lead cause the buildup of plaque on your neurons that cause them to slow down, that causes memory degradation, usually happening later on in life.
Yeah.
Or the more toxic you are, the earlier on that can build up. But if you have an injury, like if you have a concussion, depending upon where that takes place in your brain, you have an increase in ionic activity in that area because your brain's trying to heal. Well, that increase in ionic activity, it acts like a magnet to draw those metals to it. So you have a congregation, a buildup of those metals earlier on, which causes memory degradation. So in animals, because their metabolism is so much quicker, right? We know dogs are 7 to 1. And their exposure to metals is greater now than it ever has been. They're getting vaccinated. It's in their food. It's in the air they're breathing. It's on the carpet. It's in the, wherever we've got these exposures. So you're starting to see the memory stuff. So if you start to remove those metals, it's what Clean Slate's phenomenal at. But then what's needed if you start cleaning up those neurons? Well, then you need neurotransmitters. That's why we have Zero In to boost dopamine and serotonin, to get things firing again, to start rewiring those connections.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at training dogs, it's very interesting, because if you want to train dogs well, right, if you want to get them to where they're listening and paying attention, it's talked about that you have to get them in a dopamine state, right? You want them really happy. You want them, having fun. So then they're more attentive because their dopamine levels come up. Well, what if you just sprinkle a little bit on their food, or you give them a capsule and they're like, oh, I feel good. Thank you. Let's go.
And give them a nice life so they're happy. Okay, that's fantastic. Now, a few questions. I must get through these with you before you go, because got a few questions from some of the people using it. So the first one is, can you use the Clean Slate and use chlorine dioxide solution at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. And if you want to use MMS and such, it's best just to take them like a couple hours apart.
Yeah.
You can do that. Take your Clean Slate first thing in the morning, last thing at night, do chlorine dioxide anytime in between.
Yeah.
They're very complementary.
That's what when you look at the biology of them, they look like really complement each other.
And restore is the same way, because a lot of the chlorine dioxide aspect, they talk about killing parasites. They talk about, some of the anti-cancer properties and such. And both Restore and Clean Slate are very supportive in that process.
Yeah.
Right. So, they're very, very complementary, and, creating chlorine dioxide is cheap. I mean, it doesn't cost much. So.
Absolutely. I really love the stuff. So I know we've covered this before, and I know you've got video, but we're getting so many questions still. I want to go through it again. So on the bottle of the Clean Slate, it has a little box that says, I know you can't read it here, folks, but
I can.
Composition is vitamin C. And then below it then gives the silicon dioxide, sea salt, vitamin C, and preservative. So people are looking at the composition box, and I'm getting so many inquiries from people saying, oh, but it's just vitamin C and water. So why is the box separate to those other ingredients?
So with proper labeling, clinoptilolate, silicon dioxide, they don't have an RDA, right? Vitamin C does. So based on the supplement facts, and this is the important part of compliant labeling, right? Because Clean Slate is the only product that is made of or derived from clinoptilolate or zeolites. It's actually approved in the EU and the UK. All of the other products are not approved. Yeah. Because clinoptilolate's a drug in Europe because of what it can do. Even as a powdered form, they see it as a drug because of its antiviral properties, its anti-cancer properties, what it's been used for in the past, and how it's studied, researched, and proven. Stuff's amazing. Yeah. Right. So to properly label the product and to be compliant based on the rules in the outline, we can't say, oh, well, this is silicon dioxide, it's bioavailable silicon dioxide, and there's X amount, and it's derived from clinoptilolate. They go, well, you can't put that on the label. Yeah. Right. Okay. So what is it? Well, how much vitamin C is in it? Well, there's, 12 milligrams or 24 milligrams per 10 drops. So that's what we have to put under the supplement facts, because that's how much vitamin C is there. There's a standard recognized amount of saying, okay, vitamin C is very well established. And there are claims you can actually make about vitamin C. Yeah. Right. Because they're proven. So we have this percentage of the RDA in X number of drops of clean slate. In addition to that, we have the trace minerals from the sea salt. We have the silicon dioxide. What is the silicon dioxide? That's the fragments that we create from the clinoptilolite. But it's important to understand, the process. And that's why we have the video on the YouTube channel of Clean Slate. If you watch the video, they're like, we take natural clinoptilolite and we create bioavailable silica, orthosilicic acid, right? And it's the hard part of, having to continually explain it. It's like, look, we've got the materials and it's like, we have to label it. We can't come out and say, look, this is exactly what this is. And we try to as best we can, like in these conversations and on the website. They're like, why does it say this? Well, because it has to. Right? That's why I'm trying. How it has to be labeled.
These conversations, people, because I've worked in this industry for a long while, and I know it's so impossible to tell people in a leaflet or on the box what you want to tell them. So this is why I keep saying to people, this is the time. This is why you and I spend our time doing these videos when we all know how busy you are, because it's the only way we can actually get the information out to people in the way they need to hear it, because you cannot legally put that on a leaflet or put it on the website, etc.
Yeah, and we can have some of it, and we've got the videos to explain things in the process and whatnot. But what I find hilarious, right, is when people are prescribed drugs by their doctor and they go, oh, well, I'm taking hydrochlorothiazide, or I'm taking whatever. And you go, how's it made? What's on the label? Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
How'd that work out for you? Well, my kidneys are failing and, I'm diabetic now. And it's like, how'd that work out for you? Like,
no, it's so
well, I have to ask these questions about these nutraceuticals or quantumceuticals, because you never know. I'm like, you should really be asking about the other stuff, because you don't want to know what's in those.
Well, I've got a classic example, which is really relevant to people. I got so excited then my pen flicked across the room. So I've got a really, really lovely, well-educated client, and her vet prescribed her horse a so-called natural support for ulcers, for gastric ulcers. And it was full of soya products, genetically modified soya products, and sugar. But because the vet had prescribed it and told it was really good, and then when you go to something like this, and it's like, well, what about this? And I'm like, did you even read the label? And it's not their fault, because the vets are so convincing. But I think the thing is, people, the best thing, like you said before, Clayton, and like I've said, is what I really want is people to try them themselves with an objective and open, honest mind. I write little diary notes, because when you're so busy, you forget, and then just see how you're feeling and see if it's right for you and if it works for you and for your animals as well.
Yeah. And that's honestly the only thing you can and should do, right? Because we can talk.
Yeah.
And as much as we want. We can talk about science, we can talk about outcomes, we can talk about questions and go, well, someone had this question, and we can talk about other people's experiences and other case studies. None of it matters.
Yeah.
The point is, we are all a clinical trial of one, because while we're all human, right? And that's the thing, is we are all in this together. We are one tribe, right? And that's where they've done a really good job of trying to separate that. But the key is, each one of us is biologically unique, right? That's what makes us so special, because when we come together, we all bring our individuality, to this larger equation. That's, this amalgamation that you were hitting on earlier. So you don't know what this is going to do unless you do something.
Yeah. We
don't know what this is going to do to you, because, and that's what people have asked me. I mean, I've been asked this thousands of times, what's it going to do to me? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never worked with you before. So let's find out. And like you said, make notes, right? Write out, do videos. I mean, we're in a social media society. All of our phones have cameras on them and allow you to record stuff.
It's a really good point.
You don't have to post it on social media.
No.
What you need to do is just do notes for yourself. Take pictures. Like, your skin looks freaking outstanding right now.
your tongue, your eyes, your fingernails. It's just so wonderful. And then you look back and then you sort of say, oh, wow, that is so much better. And, you know, just try it yourselves, folks, because and with your animals, videos are a really good idea, because obviously there's so many compounding facts, some of which are under their control, some of which aren't. And then just keep an open mind and see if it's right for you. And if not, we'll look for something else that isn't. But certainly so far, I've been really, really impressed with the results. And I just love that. I love the products, but I also love the pay it forward aspects, the social sharing aspects of the company as well, because that's really important. So thank you so much. Anything else you wanted to share before we finish? Because you're always so generous with your time. I'm trying to think. I mean, we hit on some really good stuff. And so the one thing that I can give to the last part we're hitting on is, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And if you're going through this process, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to have conversations with friends of friends who have called and said, hey, can you talk to so-and-so, because they're not having an experience. And you have a conversation with someone and you just ask a couple questions. They're like, it's like, well, tell me about your history. They're like, well, I used to never sleep very well. I talked to one guy, he's like, I have one kidney because I lost a kidney due to, you know, my work. And I worked around all these solvents and chemicals, and it actually destroyed a kidney. So I lost a kidney, and I inhaled all this stuff. And he said, I haven't felt anything. I haven't had any experience. So I'm probably not going to continue this. I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. How's your sleep been? He's like, I sleep really well now. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, it's like, have you had anything come out of your chest and your lungs? Because, you know, it's part of the process is your body will start expelling stuff. And he's like, is that why I started hacking up all this green stuff and black stuff? And, you know, it's coughing and everything. And I'm like, had you done that before? He's like, no, that's never happened before. I'm like, oh, and that's not different than never happening before and starting to do it. How are you breathing? He's like, yeah, I breathe better now than I have in a long time. I'm like, is that a change? He's like, oh, I guess so. Because your body doesn't have a memory of feeling poorly. We weren't born with a backpack. Right? Is the best way I try to explain it. We are not meant to carry this stuff with us. So when that weight or that trauma, which is a big part, you know, heavy metals will actually store negative emotions. They'll store trauma because they hold on to that stuff. It's part of the evil plan, right? As you eliminate that stuff, as things that have plagued you go away, your body doesn't hold on to the memory of them. So if you wake up in the morning and you go for a jog, you're like, man, I'm feeling good today. Knowing that for the last 6 months, you haven't been able to walk without being in pain. Is your body and your joints mid-run going to tell you, hey, you remember yesterday when your knees hurt when you got up? Exactly. No, it doesn't do that. It's just like, hey, let's go. You know, so you really have to pay attention. And that's the importance of documentation. But pets are so amazing with this, right? Because you can see your animals if they're lethargic, if they're limping around, and you're like, man, I love my dog and he's 13 and he just doesn't have the energy that he used to. You know, you can see that he's a little bit in pain and his joints hurt because he just, at the end of the day, you can see his hips are sore. And you give him a couple drops and throw some stuff in his food. And then after a few days or a week, he's running around the house going, I love life. And you go, wait a minute, my dog's different. You know, it's so lovely. It's so lovely. And just to finish, so all 3 products are safe for cats and dogs. The dogs, yes. Cats, Clean Slate's great for both of them. With Restore, I haven't looked at the feline space. Dogs love Restore. They love Zero In. You'd have to look at some of the ingredients. I'm not sure how the turmeric and some of the stuff goes for the feline community, you know, because as you and I both know, I mean, you can give a dog one thing and a cat something different. All right. I wasn't sure about the cat, but yeah, we'll have a look at that. We'll have a look for next time, because I know a lot of people are really using, and what I find great about this is it's easy to give to cats as well, because cats can be others to get stuff into. They're not as easy as you just put it on their food and it's good to go. The interesting part with animals
is when you start the process, they're so energetically connected, right? Yeah. They sense the energy in products. You'll find that they'll start looking for it, or they're looking for you to have it. And if you get consistent with putting it on their food and then you don't, they'll let you know. Yeah. They'll either look at you or they'll tell you, they're like, you're not done yet. You need to finish the job, because they sense and they know what's happening and taking place. Humans, we're so shrouded that we don't understand that. We're the only species that chooses not to drink water, that we use other chemicals in place of what our body's made of.
Exactly.
Right. It's just like, it's asinine when you really think about it, and, the old adage of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And they go, oh yeah, it's because horses are stubborn. I'm like, no, because the horse can sense if the water's polluted.
Exactly.
If they're not drinking, you better not drink. But if they go and they go, oh, I'm going to drink from here, you should too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just understanding, those fables and the mindsets. People think, oh, well, if someone's stubborn, you can't force them to do it. I'm like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's not that they're being forced. It's they're choosing to go, not here.
Yeah.
No, we need to go somewhere else. And so just being more in tune, paying attention. And the more you do that, the more you'll find. And honestly, play with this stuff, right? Yeah. So many people, you start with clean slate with 1 to 2 drops a couple times a day to start with, but there's 10 drops twice a day on the bottle for a reason. Most people can't start there because the stuff is so strong in its process. But once you get up to that, your body, you don't understand the fact that most people, when they think detoxes and such, like, I did it for a week and it was great and I felt better. Watch what happens 9 months from now. Watch what happens a year and a half from now, when your body is continually regenerating, because every 120 days, your cells regenerate. You haven't, your blood changes over. Well, and people are like, oh, in 120 days, you can be different. Yeah. But what if you take that 120-day cycle and you multiply it out? You go, okay, I'm regenerating more every 120 days, and it's going to keep going. That's what's fun. And that's why when you watch some of the videos that we have on the YouTube channel, if you go back to 2020 and you look at some of our community on the initial videos, my hair is a lot better now than it was when we first started, when COVID started. But when you look at many of the people that are on video, on those initial videos, and then you go to a current one and you look at the same people, they don't look the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s are looking like they're in their 30s. Yeah. And you're going, well, I would take that. And it's like, well, how long did it take to do that? It's a process. It doesn't have, there's no super fix, right? This is a regeneration process. We didn't get here into the position we're in over a short period of time. Yeah. We are not going to become who we're supposed to become in a short period of time. It's a process.
Yeah.
And it's not something that can be forced. It's not something that can actually be done quickly. If you try to do this too fast, poorly, you can kill people.
Exactly. And also,
you
it's
don't
a lifestyle. I just say to everyone, it's a lifestyle. Our lifestyles, unfortunately, at the moment, from where most of we live, are continually putting these contaminants into us and hitting us from sort of every side. And therefore, it's a lifestyle change to keep up with that and keep emptying, as you say, wipe the slate clean on a daily basis. It's not something you do for 10 days and then go back to your old thing, something you incorporate into your daily lifestyle for you and your animals. And certainly, I'd love to hear from people, as you're starting to use them, leave us below. And I will put your YouTube video, the RootBrands, you've got some really good videos on there. So I'll put the link to that under this video as well. Yeah, because you've got some really good videos on there, and it's really worth people going to listen to them, because it will help give them the confidence that they need to know that there is a lot of science behind all this.
Well, not only the science, but you can hear from other people what their experiences have been, and the resonance with that, and granted, like we said, each one of us is our own clinical trial, but you can hear from people talking about their experiences, and you're probably going to hear things that you didn't think apply.
Yeah.
and you go, oh, wait a minute, this happened for her. And then explaining the pathways and understanding this is why this happens. You know, why Lori Yock had all of, you know, her post-traumatic stress from an abusive relationship, you know, that caused her to become addicted to opioids and caused, you know, night terrors, and it really destroyed a lot of her life. And she found Clean Slate because she saw some of the eczema and psoriasis case studies, and she had psoriasis and eczema, which is just a sign of liver toxicity. And she wanted to take Clean Slate to clean up her eczema and psoriasis, because that's what she was thinking was her thing. She didn't realize that, you know, in a month she cleared and was able to release all of that post-traumatic stress that she carried with her. The depression, the anxiety, the night terrors, all of that stuff was gone. And then her arms started to clear up. So you don't get to dictate how your body is going to go through this process. What you think you want might not be the steps that your system is going to take through this approach. So that's what's really important. Is it's a lot like Shrek said in Shrek. The ogres are like onions, right? They have layers. So do we. We are this amazing masterpiece. It's one of the reasons that I sit in front of the paintings, many of the paintings my wife has done, right? Is that we are each this amazing masterpiece, but we've been sitting in someone's attic for a long time, and there's this patina that's been built up over us. So as you can't go in and wipe all that stuff all at once, because you'll destroy the work. But if you very slowly start to take away, you know, those layers and layers and layers of years of exposure, you begin to see this masterpiece. And then, you know, when you really start to clean things up, you go, oh, wow, this is a work of art that we've never seen before. And we, you know, then it's ready to show the world. And then you put it under light and you go, oh, wow, look at this. It glows.
Yeah.
That's up.
Thank you so much. And everyone who is watching this, do feel free to let us know your experiences under the video. And my contact email is always under there, and also how to order and the referral code. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, onwards and upwards, everyone. Keep strong, resist the tyranny, and take responsibility for your health.
Fight the power.
Fight, friendly fight.
Thanks for having me.
Clayton. Have a great day.